박수로 맞이해주시기 바랍니다.
Mr. Putin, if you're listening, has said that whoever rules AI will rule the world. China has said that they will do that by 2030. There are human brain projects that are relating to AI, and AI relating to human brain. It's a symbiosis of research between the two. Being done by the United States, European Union, China, and artificial brain projects by IBM, Google, Facebook, Baidu, Microsoft, Alibaba, Apple, and Amazon, and some others. Which means that the great brain race is on. The distinctions between understanding the brain and augmenting that brain with artificial intelligence will become a blur. Who cares the difference? We're walking into a world of being augmented geniuses. So those little contact lenses that were mentioned before, if they can read the IQ test, search for their answers, and if those data centers are going the way you say they're going to go, well, before I even considered to ask what the answer is, it's in front of me. So what happens when a world is full of augmented geniuses? So I nurture to this because we've talked about the arms race in the past. This is the new arms race. It's deadly serious. Now, there are three forms of artificial intelligence, and they get confused all the time, and it's making the conversation around the world a mess. So I want you to get this right. What we have today is artificial narrow intelligence. That's what AlphaGo is. AlphaGo is narrow intelligence. It cannot drive a car. The AI that drives your car cannot diagnose cancer. They're machine learning, they learn, they get smarter all the time. That's all true. But that's not general intelligence. General intelligence is a little bit like you in the sense that when you're confronted with a new problem you've never had, what do? You ask your friends, you do Google searches, you do all kinds of research. Narrow intelligence doesn't do that. It stays in its own lane. General AI, if we get it, draws on the Internet of Things, the sensors you're talking about, everything in that whole brain, cyber brain you're talking about, simultaneously rewrites its own code and shares it with the general intelligence. That means the whole planet gets smarter and smarter and smarter and smarter all the time. Now, we don't know, at least I don't, that artificial general intelligence is possible. It's a tough deal. But I'm happy to take a bet that we'll have it. And if it's also true that military research, military intelligence, tends to be ahead of what the public gets, and if general intelligence is possible, say 10, 15 years, and if military intelligence tends to be 10 to 15 years ahead, then they may have it now. I don't know. In any case, the next one is called superintelligence. That's what science fiction is warning you about. Superintelligence is general intelligence that sets its own goals independent of human awareness. That's a big deal. And the reason that you get stories from Elon Musk and all the rest of these people about, oh my God, artificial intelligence will lastly reinvent. They're not talking about narrow. They're not talking about general. They're talking about super. But the reason we're panicking today is because we have no idea how long it will take to go from general to super. We don't know. By definition, we wouldn't know, because it's ahead of us. Now, the whole transformation and digital changes and so forth is not just AI. It is not just AI, it's not just robotics. It's a whole bunch of technologies together, and we tend to forget this. It's the synergies of all the things I'll quickly click through here. So to make life simple for you, we call it NT. Just like ICT brings together a whole bunch of stuff. We just call it IT. Well, we're going to have this for MT. So this technology is coming up that's a big deal, is synthetic biology and genomics. Synthetic biology could be a bigger deal than the steam engine. The steam engine allowed the Industrial Revolution that allowed us to manipulate matter and energy in new ways. Synthetic biology does that for biology. It's not genetic engineering. Genetic engineering, you take DNA, you change something, and you make the rose glow at night. It's still a rose. Synthetic biology, you sit in front of a computer, you assemble the whole idea, you get the parts, you put it in a medium to grow, and you make a species that's never existed before. How many new species will we create? More than you're willing to believe today. Computational science. You simulate science, which means that you can do it much faster than the laboratory. You don't even have to publish in a scientific journal anymore. That's going to speed up scientific breakthroughs, which gives you a larger pool from which applied technology draws. Cloud computing, data analytics was well explained. Artificial and augmented reality, nanotechnology, two kinds. What we have today is big machines making little stuff. It makes your tennis racket stronger and your paint lasts longer and so forth. The other kind is like nature does. It's a plant. Produces food through molecular manufacturing on that leaf. We don't know how to do that yet. When we do, that will be a whole new major evolution. The Internet of Things, everything, tell everybody, semantic web, quantum computing. By the way, I'm curious, how many people know that IBM now is making available on the cloud 5 qubits for quantum computing? I'm curious. Of course, all the front row. Okay, now you all know. So people say, well, quantum computing is way off in the future. No. You can actually access elementary stuff today. And we've been tracking this. I've been in future research for a long time. We've been tracking this evolution, and the forecasts have tended to be less each time. It's going faster than people think. Telepresence, holographic communications, intelligence augmentation, collective intelligence, blockchain, 3D, 4D printing, drones, driverless cars, conscious technology, and the synergies among all these things. That's what NT is. This is the thing that people miss when they forecast technology. They take a technology and they project it out. Well, if you did this with a video camera, you wouldn't have projected into a telephone. If you projected a telephone, you wouldn't have come out with a calendar. If you projected the flashlight, you wouldn't have come out with a smartphone. Right? So it's the synergies of these things that's a big deal. So what's possible will change. With Moore's Law, Nelson's Law is one with bandwidth. Everybody knows about Moore's Law, right? Computational power, etc. And that's accountable for much of our change because as computers have improved and they're attached to other things, those other things accelerate because computers accelerate. But then you add to that artificial intelligence moving into artificial general intelligence. Quantum computing will speed up AI. AI will speed up quantum computing. It's a very big feedback loop. Then you add in computational science, getting far more knowledge of nature. And then the synergies among all these next technologies, and these four together will change what we think is possible. So the idea isn't simply forecasting X, it's to figure out what you want to do. Because by and large, whatever you think is a cool thing to do is most likely possible. Meanwhile, today, we're already connecting brains to computers. The guy thinks, his arm moves, and it's a machine. The person on the left is looking at a computer game, and he is not touching the mouse. He's holding his knee of that couch. He plays the game, and he thinks, click. The other person does not know the game at all, but the other person has his finger on a mouse, and he goes, click. This is 5 years ago. Right? So the continuum of the human brain and technology is going to become just a normal way of life. This is the contact lens I talked about before. This is what your children can take their IQ tests with. Now, if we can augment geniuses, what the world will be like? These two guys are admitted big global changes, right? Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. What have these two guys done? So what happens when you got millions, if not billions, of augmented geniuses? What can they create? We've already got the contact lens research going on. This is Elon Musk's approach. He wants to put it into your brain. And never sell Elon Musk short. He's been pretty good at surprising people. So myself, I prefer the contact lens, but the research, and they're hiring, by the way. If anybody wants to do this, if you go to that, go to the website of Neuralink.com, they're hiring right now to develop this. So the idea of technology-enhanced human intelligence seems to be a given, but where is all this going to in the future? You got two major trends. One, humans becoming augmented with technology. On our body, in our clothes, all of that. And the other is the built environment becoming sentient, responding to us. We talk to it, it talks to us, one big collective intelligence system. And that's the conscious technologies of post-information age. So whatever you see, whether it's a chair or a building, imagine it acting as if it was conscious. Right? And then any technology capability you can think of, imagine it become micro-miniaturized and being on your body. And that's a general way of seeing the future of conscious technology. So the old mystic adage about we're all one, this is the technology backup. What are some of the economic social risks of all this stuff? The inevitability of new economics or social disintegration. This is very serious stuff. We know that wealth is concentrated, right? And I don't care whether you're in China or the United States. It's a phenomenon of the human condition in our technological age. Income gaps are widening. We all know when the rich are too rich and the poor are too poor, something happens. Well, we've got a lot of investment into your data centers. We've got a lot of investments into airports. Let's not blow them up. It's a lot to rebuild. Employmentless economic growth seems to be the new normal. Return on investment in capital and technology is usually better than labor. Future technologies can replace much of human labor, be it mental labor or physical labor. Long-term structural unemployment is a business as usual or surprise-free trend forecast. So what do we do about this? We studied a whole bunch of these other studies. We found out what they didn't answer and what they answered badly. We did another study on that. We produced a bunch of scenarios, gave the scenarios to our nodes around the world. They then did workshops and came up with 93 actions. So when someone says, what do we do about this? And they say, well, we'll have STEM education. We'll just make more scientists and engineers. By 2050, as was pointed out, we may have 9 billion people on the planet, with a workforce of about 6 billion people. Out of that 6 billion people, how many will be able to be employed in science, technology, and engineering? Not all 6 billion. So giving the answer that STEM education will solve the problem is very inadequate. Now, one of the scenarios, number 2, is a serious issue. That is that as we have created artificial intelligence and software and internet systems, we are concentrating people's views of their own world into little pockets. You know, Google gives you more of what you did. Well, what does that do? It reinforces you continually, but you don't know what he's thinking. Right? But what he's thinking can affect you. So we become, now, it's not that this will happen. The idea of the future, futures don't know the truth of the future. Right? You got that? I'm telling you about possibilities and what we should do. So don't take these things as predictions. But in this world, because we don't get trans decision-making systems, because most of our challenges in the world we face are transnational, trans-institutional, trans-cultural, right? But if we're all in these little pockets, we're not doing the trans part. So who fills the gap? Organized crime. Organized crime makes twice as much money a year as all the military budgets combined. So they fill the gap. Number 3, everything works out nicely. So if you get depressed by number 2, read number 3, you'll be okay. In this situation, people do figure out what to do. There are answers. We just not apply them. There are answers. And one of the things that comes up in this scenario is the cost of living to the individual user starts to eventually go down. It's going up still now, but it'll eventually start to go down. You take labor out of production and you lower your cost. You increase your economy of scale, and automation and so forth, your costs go down. So eventually our cost of living will go down. Not yet, but eventually. Same time, you want to have new things to tax. All those NTs, new income. So you imagine two graphs. One, your cost of living going down, and your income going back up. When that crosses over, guaranteed annual income can make sense. It doesn't make sense yet. So when people argue pro and con, ask them what year are they talking about. It doesn't make sense right now. But by 2030, when the general intelligence might come in, it makes sense. If that's the case, then we can open up creativity like the world has never imagined before. How many people are born, work, and die, and never know who they are, never explore their own creativity, their unique gift to the world? You do that because you have a system where you have to work to get money. You also have self-respect by a job. I am an engineer working for IBM. That's my self-respect. If I knock that out, we can become a bunch of heroin cyber addicts. And a horrible situation. So the idea of the self-actualizing economy is that we have gone from a majority of the world of extreme poverty all the way as recently as 1980s or so. Now it's under 10%. We as a civilization are winning more than we're losing. We're taking care of the basic needs. The love and belongingness is being taken care of by some of the social media. So that we're moving towards self-actualization so that you start to make a living out of evolving your own mind, your own consciousness, your own interest, your own passion. You listen to great millionaires, and what do they tell you? I follow my passion. Well, what happens if all of us have a basic guaranteed income so you can experiment, and you're free to do that, and you're an augmented genius, and you start to explore your own self, and you connect with markets around the world for who you are, rather than you walking across the street for a job that's no longer there. So, we've got organized crime, terrorism still going on, corruption, unfortunately, still going on, and now the new kid on the block is information warfare. These four things will overlap and can make a polluted information mess where we don't understand what's true and what's false, making democracy and free markets an illusion. Now, right now, people talk about information warfare by country A messing around with country B. They take over their White House without firing a shot. Cost effective. Very good idea. But it's not just nation states, because if we continue to increase the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, we have all these speeches, we have all these conferences, we have all these treaties, but the CO2 parts per million keep going up every year. If that continues, the non-governmental organization, environmental movements will get more desperate. When they get more desperate, they're going to be in this game. It's not just governments. Now, if you take a look at the private sector, what's the future of marketing? What's the nature of marketing? You're trying to figure out how you get the thing to the right person in the right way that they want it at the right price, right? That means you want to know what the thinking is. It's also nice if you can manipulate that thinking. That's the purpose of advertising. So you get really fancy and you end up information warfare being conducted by corporations. If I know you're going to come out with a product in 1 month that's better than mine, I might have a press conference next week and say, in 2 months, my product is going to be better than his. What happens? They don't buy your product. Now, that's many small stuff that happens today. But this stuff can get a lot more businesses. Then terrorist organizations will start to realize, hey, I don't have to kidnap somebody. I don't have to blow up a building. I can manipulate perception. And if I don't have the skill, I can contract out to organized crime. So what do we do about this? Because these things will start to overlap and make a very polluted world. And those data centers will help. Make it cost effective to do that. So, What we got to do is to get our information about information warfare into some sort of set of data banks to create an AI system to do some predictive analytics. And then identify the characteristics of potential future actions and have those characteristics matched on social media. So that instead of just getting an advertisement for a trip you want to take to Jeju Island, you might also get, by the way, in a month from now, X conference will occur. With your background, your geographic location, maybe you could Twitter about that and counter any nonsense simultaneously, so it doesn't go out in the loop. But this kind of cycle, improving, and this is still narrow intelligence, by the way, this is not general, but this is a very fancy narrow intelligence. It's something like this that we need to get ahead of the game, because right now, the only thing I see happening, and I wrote about this about 30 years ago in a book called Future Mind, so I've been tracking it for a long time. But what people are talking about now is countering fake news, or countering lies. But they're out there. They have to be out there before you counter them. So we have pollution. So it's like having a river where you get chemical pollution and say, that's chemical pollution. True, but you've got to get ahead of the game to stop the chemical pollution. So we have to do this. We as a species have to do this. Even Russia and China has to do this, because if we create too much pollution, we'll all go down the tubes together. Now, if that doesn't work out, bankers are realizing that they can give their top clients an AI avatar, eventually, but not too far in the future, that will scour the internet for good investment possibilities and actions. So they'll make them rich. So they're like, you're my best client, and I want to multiply you. I give you this AI just as a token of my esteem. This can also be your filter system to help you out. Now, all know the Maslow hierarchy of needs. This is what I'm saying about this. It's one of our saving graces. Because we are, as a species, going right up that hierarchy. You can chart that. And every layer, you've got businesses. Right? We haven't gotten up to self-actualization yet, but I think that's the next step. Self-actualization economy can apply to society. Basic physical needs are being met. Extreme poverty is likely to be gone by 2030. So the UN's goal is not crazy. It's a trend forecast. We produce a State of the Future Index for the last 20 years or whatever. And the forecasts about extreme poverty going down have been consistently too pessimistic. And if I just take the data, nothing other than just being empirical, straight data, projected, 2030 is perfectly reasonable to talk about the end of extreme poverty. Social media platforms and content are addressing much of our love and belongingness needs and some self-esteem needs. Over half the world is connected to the internet now. We can find markets for our interests around the world rather than a local job, which may not exist in the future. You don't have to run out of your life's work. I mean, that's an expanding activity. The more you self-actualize, the more you want to do. So this is a saving grace for the future of civilization, in my judgment. Blockchain can help that work. Thank you very much.